At full power, the engine's spinning some 5 or 8 times faster than a model propeller engine, producing 10 pounds of thrust. And that's enough to propel models like this one to 180 miles an hour. At such speeds, jet models can become a tiny dot in the sky in a matter of seconds. They must be flown by experienced model pilots with good eyesight and fast reflexes. This engine is larger still, and although it too is a miniature version of bigger jets, it is intended for use in industry and universities rather than model aircraft. Pure jets are so new to model aircraft that reasonable international limits for their size have still to be agreed, and the engine manufacturers are suggesting their own. This one is mounted in a king-size model of a German experimental aircraft of the Second World War. The original was captured at the end of the war and probably never flew. Its not-so-miniature replica made it into the air 50 years later. It was designed and built by Chris Golds, a former Royal Air Force jet fighter pilot, well known in the model aircraft world for his impressive models of military aircraft. This is his first jet turbine-powered model. Despite its size, standard radio control equipment flies it as it makes the exciting, rather gentle sound of the very latest chapter in the history of powered, controlled model flight. And an extra bonus of its size and lifting capacity is that a video camera could be mounted in the nose to record a model's eye view of its flight. Some years before the arrival of jet turbines, the model aircraft industry had developed a method of simulating jet engines by using a piston engine to drive an internal multi-bladed propeller. It's called a ducted fan. There's a big following for this compromise between propeller and jet power, and its comparative cheapness will ensure its continued popularity despite the arrival of pure jets.
This runs something around 5 brake horsepower, bearing in mind your average family saloon is maybe 90 brake horsepower. So you've got an awful lot of power in a very small engine. To provide the propulsion, we use a multi-bladed propeller, which we call an impeller, inside a tubular shroud, which literally accelerates the air coming in and pushes it out the back at a much higher velocity, somewhere around 150 to 200 miles an hour. This engine produces around 10 pounds of static thrust when running at about 25,000 RPM.
But that's a piston engine, isn't it?
Yes, it's a normal piston engine, but with high technology, it's in effect a racing engine. About 5 brake horsepower sitting in that, which is 15 cc's. Rear-mounted carburetor. We use a very special tune pipe exhaust, which increases the power yet further.
Much experiment with the size and shape of the fans, their ducts and tailpipes has gradually increased their power, and the world's military jet aircraft provide an enormous range of subjects for the adventurous jet jockeys of the model aircraft world. Chris Golds chose ducted fans, 8 of them, to power the latest of the long line of big jets which he's demonstrated at model meetings all over the country. The Americans' Boeing B-52 is a huge, ugly aircraft with a sinister history of devastating bombing attacks during the Vietnam War. But its enormous swept wings and 4 pairs of jet engines slung in pods beneath them presented Golds with the kind of challenge he relishes in designing and building big planes.
How long did it take to build it? well, exactly a year from the day Ron and I stood on the patio with the paper pattern, and that was the 3rd of September, 93, and we flew her on the 3rd of September this year.
Britain's aviation law regards all flying models as aircraft, and if they weigh more than 7 kilos, their owners need special permission from the Civil Aviation Authority to fly them. Now it's proposed that the building and flying of models over 20 kilos should conform to stringent new regulations. And all heavy models must carry a fail-safe device to shut down the engines if radio contact with them is lost. With 8 piston engines to start, the procedure had to be swift and sure, if the first to start was not to use too much of its fuel supply before the last in the line came to life. The building and flying of this model had been closely followed by the model aviation press. It had already completed 2 flights, and with all 8 engines on song, it lifted off at its West Country base for the 3rd time. This was to have been its last flight of the year, after which Golds intended to ground it for the winter to make minor adjustments and await the next year's flying season. But it turned out to be its final flight. On its 3rd majestic circuit of the field, it would not respond to its elevator control, and it plunged to destruction. This is the possibility which all model aircraft builders must live with. The exact cause of this disaster could not be traced, but Gold's quest for big, unusual models takes him to the leading edge of the world of miniature aircraft, where the price of a simple failure can be high. Bitterly disappointed, he nonetheless displayed the philosophical approach to a hobby which offers great delight to its practitioners and spectators, but which must always endure gravity as its implacable enemy.
Just lost the elevators. But as I'm the designer, the builder and the pilot, it's my responsibility, nobody else's. It's a shame though. It's a lot of work. I just lost elevator control. She started putting her nose down and I ended up with the stick hard back in my stomach and it just didn't respond. I don't know why. You don't have time to find out why. It saves dismantling it though, doesn't it?
But it's not all high-tech and high-speed in the model aircraft world. There are many other branches of it we've not had time to cover in these programmes, but we take a last look at the low-tech end of the scale, where the traditionalists still fly models as they were flown before radio control arrived. These are the free flighters, who relinquish all control of them the moment they launch them into the air, many choosing the most difficult and unlikely subjects to model while they're at it.